Right.
Okay.
The Message Talk Show is back again, back. Find the links on Master the Message and some links on the Message Talk Show on Facebook.
Well, it has to be the Message Talk Show. It is Thursday, 11 o'clock, and it has to be the Message Talk Show. It's the only talk show that you listen to. It's the only talk show that you listen to at 11 o'clock on a Thursday morning. My name's Alex Gordon, and welcome to the Message Talk Show, broadcasting all the way from London. I tell you, the weather is amazing in London at the moment. It is sunny, it is warm, it's nice, it's amazing. So if you're not in London, man, you're missing something. I don't know where you are. If you're not in London, you're missing something. So good morning. If you're in the States, if you're in America, if you're in the Caribbean, good morning. And if you're not in those parts of the world, it's probably good evening. And if you're not in those parts of the world, it's probably good night, because I know Australia right now is good night. So wherever you are, good morning, good evening, and good night. And welcome to the Message Talk Show. Today we have an amazing guest with us today, an amazing guy who's going to really shed some light on some of the things that's been happening across the world, across London. And we're talking about what's next, because after everything that's said and done, after all the demonstrations, after all the protests, something has to happen on the ground to bring change. Something has to happen. Something has to take place. And that's why the Message Talk Show exists. You know why? Because we believe that passionate, mission-centered individuals bring change. Those are the only people who are going to bring change in our world. Entrepreneurial, passionate individuals. So we work with content creators. We work with educators. We work with speakers. We work with coaches. We work with people who have a drive for bringing change and use what they have, their inner being, their soul, to bring that change. So if you're a small business owner, if you are an entrepreneur, if you just have an idea and you are formulating that idea, make connection with us. Let's help you get it out. Let's help you go from unknown to unforgettable. That's what you want. You want to be unforgettable, because of all the speakers out there, of all the guys out there standing and talking, you want to be known for being unforgettable. When people walk away from your presentations, when people walk away from your shows, they want to remember you and say, this guy is amazing. This lady is amazing. I've never heard it like this before. So tune into the Message Talk Show. We broadcast 11 o'clock on a Thursday. And if you can't tune in for the live play, tune in for the replay. The replay is there waiting for you. So here's what I want you to do for me right now. Press the share button. Yes, press the share button. Connect with your friends. Connect with everybody you know and tell them that the Message Talk Show has gone live, and they must listen to the show. There is no other show that they listen to 11 o'clock on a Thursday morning. Get that right, okay? So today we have a guest in-house by the name of Mr. Emmanuel Gotora. Emmanuel, just say hi to the crowd today, sir.
Good morning. Hello, everybody, wherever you are in the world. I'm Emmanuel Gotora. Pleased to be here joining you today, all the way from London.
You see, he's already taken my line. This is the type of guy he is, you know. He doesn't ask permission for anything. He's already taken my line and my strap line to talk to you, the audience. This is an amazing guy. He's been doing some tremendous things across the country. So here it is. If you think about it, we've had the demonstrations. We've had the protests. We've had the marches. We've had a number of things happen as a result of, Black Lives Matter spanning the globe. Yeah, it wasn't just one country, it spanned the globe. And people were in a moment of time where they were sitting at home, listening and taking note of everything that was going on. So now that we've had that, what's next? What's next? What have we got to do now to bring the change that we want, in our world? What have we got to do? So before I go to our guest, let me just tell you about this gentleman. Emmanuel Gotora is a community director at Africa Community Land Trust, and works as a lead organizer for the East London Community Organisation called Telco. Telco is a founding chapter of Citizens UK and is an alliance of 85 civil society organisations across 6 East London boroughs. In 2016, Telco celebrated 20 years of campaigning and social change in East London. Now, there were a number of campaigns, which Emmanuel will go to at some point. He will tell us all about that. But Emmanuel has over 11 years experience as a community organizer and has been involved in community organizing for almost 2 decades. He has a proven track record, which includes training thousands of community leaders, working with community and faith leaders to build powerful institutions to work together for the common good, winning the living wage campaign for 150 cleaners at the University of East London. Now, listen to this. I took this quote direct from their website, and I was just really amazed by this quote. Here it is. Now, listen carefully for this one. Now, if you haven't pressed the share button, I'm disappointed, okay? So press the share button right now. Tell your friends that the Message Talk Show has gone live, talking about what's next after all the demonstrations, after everything we see. The question is, how do we organize? How to organize to bring change? How to organize to bring change in our community? How to organize to bring change in the lives of our community? So listen to this now. People who feel powerless, isolated, or exploited must organize and take power to change the world for the better. People who feel powerless and isolated, the key thing, they must organize to bring change. Change does not come on its own. Change happens because we organize. So Emmanuel Gotora, welcome to the Message Talk Show, sir.
Thank you for having me, Alex. Pleasure to be here.
Man, it's just been one of those things. We had to go into lockdown to get you to come on this show, because if there was anything else happening, you would not have the time to be here right now. So I know that. So hey, lockdown has served me very well today.
I would say so, Alex.
So Emmanuel, tell us what got you to the point of organizing. What's your story to organizing? How did you get there?
So many of you will know across the world, actually, the murder of Stephen Lawrence. When that happened, in a similar fashion, really, to my reaction to the killing of George Floyd, was that could have been me, or that could have been my brother, or that could have been my cousin. But the murder of Stephen Lawrence really woke me up as a young person. Stephen Lawrence was born in 1974. I was born in 1973, so I was just a year older than him. I felt really angry, actually, but didn't have any place to kind of move my anger to action. I was really angry for a long time at what had happened to Stephen Lawrence, a young man much like me, with dreams that he would never fulfill. And it was actually through that anger and trying to find a channel for acting on my anger that I came across through my church, actually, Community Organising and Citizens UK. And it felt like the right place for me to be able to turn my anger into action. So that's really how I came to organising, out of that tragedy, and kind of looking for a space and a place that would connect really my faith and civil action in terms of racism. Really quite shockingly woken up by that murder of Stephen Lawrence. So that's really what brought me to organising. And I attended a training with Citizens UK, which taught me how to turn your anger into action and how to build power with people. And I've been doing that really since 2001 through Citizens UK. So I actually work for them now, covering 13 boroughs in East London and North London more recently. So I work with organisations from Barking and Dagenham, everything in between, all the way up to Harrow. And I work with a staff team of about 7 or 8 brilliant organisers. And I also organise and supervise some of our work up in Leeds as part of my role. So that's really a bit of me, a bit of what got me into organising. I guess one of my passions is really seeing young people thrive. My background is also as a youth pastor in the New Testament Church of God, which is where I met Alex. And seeing young people thrive in education, in work, and and in life in general. And so that's really what brought me to try and work with young people as well through that avenue. We work with a lot of schools through my work in organizing, and I was once also a governor in St. Anthony's Primary School, which is actually a fantastic school in Newham. It was won the award for state primary school in 2019, 2020. And so, yeah, that's really been my passion to work with young people, but also to work with institutions and strengthen them to play their part in civil society and in society in general.
Now, you mentioned working with a number of individuals across London, across the boroughs, as other community organisers. What is it that community organisers actually do in the community? What do they actually do?
I'm a talent scout. We scout for talent because we know that the talent is already there in the organizations. The talent is already there in the communities. And so we seek this talent, and we basically have conversations with people in these organizations and ask them, what do you care about? What do you want to change? And can you go and find 10 other people who care about the same thing that you care about? And can we organize? Can we strategize? Can we have a plan? Can we do a power analysis? Can we build power? And can we figure out the specific things that we actually want to change? So, you can't really act on youth violence. You've got to name it. You've got to eat the elephant one bite at a time. You've got to reduce it to issues. What's the issue? As we're hearing even now, a few hours ago, I was looking at some Twitter feeds which are talking about exclusions of young people from schools and how actually that disproportionately affects young Black people. And when they go to a pupil referral unit, actually quite a few of those spaces, and I know lots of people who work in PR PRUs, as they're called here, who are dedicated, but actually in terms of the space, it's not a good space for most young people who are already troubled. So yeah, we scout talent, Alex, and then we train people. We do a lot of leadership development, a lot of leadership training, because actually, even though we're known for our campaigns are nothing without the people. So, we put people before program, people first.
So when you scout talent and you train them, what do you actually train them to do? What specifically are you training them to do?
Tell your story. The first thing we ask people is, what is your story? Who are you? What do you want to change? So storytelling is really the key and the core of what we do. Tell your story in a way that communicates who you are and what you want to change. And so we use different tools that we train people, teach people how to actually tell your story, and how do you actually have a public and political conversation with somebody. You started this podcast, Alex, by talking about the weather and how nice it is in London. Yeah, that's great. And, we might talk about football or other things that's fantastic. But how do you have a political conversation about what's happening in our world right now? It doesn't happen by itself. And of course, you can vent your anger. And you ask the right question. What next? What next? Change is already here. I mean, change has been here for a long time. I think George Floyd was really just a turning point, a tipping point for quite a lot of the stuff that, it wasn't just about George Floyd. There were other people killed, not just in the States, but actually here in the UK. And you and I know are close friends of, with people who died in police custody. So we do train them. The first thing we train is tell your story, because apart from the statistics, it's your story that's going to move people to actually want to change.
But if you think about earlier, you talked about the Stephen Lawrence murder that actually agitated you and got you motivated to take action. The Stephen Lawrence outburst and the Stephen Lawrence murder, the outburst from that, and even in the last, I think, 5 years when we had a revisit, an investigation of what took place then, didn't cause an outburst in London the way that the George Floyd campaign from across the States caused an outburst in the UK. Why do you think that's so?
I can only speak for myself, Alex. I think for me personally, I was disappointed at the lack of involvement of our communities, with the Stephen Lawrence murder. I was really disappointed, and part of that was also part of my anger. Like, why aren't more people doing more about this stuff, especially here on our doorstep? Really, I think for me personally, George Floyd scenario and the kind of blatant murder in broad daylight was for me a tipping point, but mainly because there were lots of other things that had happened up until then. You know, Breonna Taylor was murdered in her home, and you know, there were a few other murders happened in the States at the time, but also here. You know, let's not think about this thing as an American thing. It also happens here, and I think for me, the way I see that just became a catalyst. I mean, there was already the kind of spark, but then I think what happened to George Floyd just really tipped a lot of people over, and it wasn't just about, you know, quite a lot of the time we're seeking allies, and we're maybe just it's about people who are most affected by the issue, kind of calling out for change. But actually, this time around, it is been more people. I can name, Alex, I can count probably about 10 or 15 conversations I've had since the murder of George Floyd with people asking me the question, what do I do? And I can't tell you what to do. Do what is in your power to do. Think about where you are. If you're a business, can you take on a young apprentice? And actually, not just any young apprentice. Can you look into your community? If you're a black business and you can't afford to take an apprentice, could you actually look into your local school, your local church, and actually link up with those young people? So I think it was a tipping point, Alex. I think there's a lot of things that had happened, but I think the kind of for me was the blatant nature of the murder from somebody who should be serving and protecting, as they say in the States, despite the cause of I can't breathe. And I looked at that scenario and I thought that could have been me. That could have been me, or at least that could have been my brother or my uncle. And I think that was for me the kind of trigger in terms of like, right, we need to do something about this. And actually, you know, I've directed some of my work, even from 10 years ago, towards trying to build power in the black community, especially power in the black church. But also working with black educators in some of the schools that we work with to try and see how can we actually make a change and make a difference.
But when you say build power, what do you actually mean about building power? What does that constitute, building power?
Well, Alex, the thing that we so in my line of work, we define power as organized people and organized money. We've got to be organized. Now, what the demonstrations and the Black Lives Matter movement has actually done is to mobilize and at least even conscientize people to some of the things that some of us didn't know about, or just chose to ignore. So mobilizing is good, because actually what we've seen is a lot of change through mobilization, and mobilizing has its place. What happens next is we need to organize. We need to build permanent alliances, because, you know, when you mobilize, you attend, typically you attend a march or a protest, and you go home, and you're not in relationship with those people with whom you've been on the march with. But organizing is you know, building power through organized people is a little bit more, is a bit deeper than that, and it's a longer term as well. So it takes a lot more commitment of time and money and energy and effort. It's about building people power. How do we build public relationships between ourselves to be able, because that's the power that we have. We may not have the money power of the banks or the bureaucratic power of the local authority or the police, but we do have people power. We have more people in our institutions, really, than perhaps most of us, but we do have a little bit of money. So we also need to organize that money that we have to be able to do the things that we need to do independently, because we're going to need to challenge authority, and we're going to need to create systems that subvert systems that are not working for our people. We're going to need to do that. That's what I mean by building power: organizing people, organizing money.
So why did you mention the churches? Because you specifically mentioned the churches, especially black churches. Why is that so important?
It's important to me because that is my background, but it's also important because I feel like the black-led, black majority church is somewhat of a sleeping giant in this equation, and you really needs to. And we have no problem mobilizing, by the way. You know, if not for lockdown, basically every Sunday we have millions of people attending our churches, so we're mobilized really,
Hey,
really well.
people come out to
Right?
church. That's right.
Yeah, but are we organized? Are we organized? That's the question. So that's really, and that's been my passion, Alex, to build power mostly in the black church, black-led, black majority church, because it is the space that is led by mostly led by black people in this country. Of course, there are black businesses as well, and I think that for me, that's another avenue to try and mobilize money. Right? We talk about mobilize money. How do black businesses actually organize their money together to be able to be a force for change and a force for good in our communities?
Okay, so let me probe you on some of the campaigns that's been very successful with telco and citizens.
Okay,
what are some of them, and why were they successful?
So the most successful campaign I've been involved in, which is really how I started my journey with citizens, is the living wage campaign. And the living wage campaign is basically really calling on employers to do the right thing by their workers. And when I talk about workers, we're talking about those people during lockdown who were deemed to be key workers. We're talking about care workers, cleaners, security people who are on low pay. In some of our local authorities or boroughs, we've got 30+% of people working poverty. So it's really about if you're in working poverty, you're more likely to be working 2 or 3 jobs just to make ends meet, which means you're not with your family when you should be, which means children are not getting the kind of support they might need from you as parents, and inadvertently it's a kind of a vicious cycle. They might end up actually not performing or underperforming, being excluded, all of those things. Or even just like the more positive end, families not able to afford to go on holiday. And lockdown and COVID-19 has given us has highlighted why that is necessary, why that is actually it's not just a luxury, because you do need a break from your everyday work and your everyday life to be able to just have some leisure time. That's something that people should be able to afford to do. So the living wage campaign has now put nearly £6 billion back into the pockets of low-paid staff. We're running a campaign right now for living wage for care workers. It's not just about key workers, as in the kind of broad sense, where we're talking specifically about care workers, because they were missed out even in the latest budget from the Chancellor in terms of a pay rise. If anybody deserves a pay rise at this moment in time, it's the hospital staff, it's care workers, and they were missed out this time around. So we're running that campaign.
When you say missed out, is that, how can you forget the very staff that's carried us through the lockdown? Why do you think that we're forgotten?
It's about where they are in terms of the kind of power dynamic, Alex. So if you are a in that role, I mean, that's where really the power of citizens comes in, is because most of these people, Alex, guess where they are? In our churches. Their parents in our schools. So where do we find the stories? Remember we talked about the stories? Where do we find the people with the stories to be able to tell us, hey, I'm working at this particular place and I'm not getting paid a living wage? Because those people are within our churches and they're within the parents group in our school. And by having these conversations, we can then build power with them and put them in front of their employers, put them in front of the Chancellor, tell their stories, help them to articulate their stories, not tell their stories for them, but help them to articulate their own stories, because they know their stories better than anybody else.
Wow.
And so, of course, we know that some of the challenges that people in the care industry, mostly Black people, or people from kind of BAME backgrounds, if we want to go more broader, is I've heard stories actually through this lockdown of racism, and the thing that we know is being talked about in the press, how racism is linked to the disproportionate deaths in Black frontline staff. And I've heard testimony, I've heard personal stories of people who say, this is what happened to me, and this is really linking to what you're hearing in the press. And so we need to build power with, and we need to be able to help them to not just amplify their voice, but we need to be able to take action and work with. Because when I say work with, these are, when we talk about change, we start with the question, who are my people? And these are our people in our churches and schools and local community groups and tenants and residents associations. These are the groups we work with, because these within themselves are pockets of power. They have organized people, or they could be organized. That's why I have a job, because that's what I do, to help you get organized.
So can anybody get involved?
Anybody can get involved. The way we work is through building the power of institutions, because we think, when you think about the term institutional racism, it's the racism within an institution, right? So what we're trying to do is build the power of institutions to power of institutions in civil society to meet the power of institutions in kind of the civic public life. So you can get involved mostly through an institution. Okay, so if you're in a local tenants and residents association, charity, and so forth, you can. But if you don't have to, if you're not in an organization, and we're actually having conversations now with a few young people, young people. They were young people when I was their youth pastor, but they're now adults in their own right, and they're actually doing fantastic things in different fields. And actually, we're talking about just attend the training, get the tools, and go and make the change with another group of people. And actually, you can then create an organization, right? You can then create an alliance of 10 people who can work together collectively going forward, not in silos, not because there is a difference between organizing and activism. What we're really trying to enact, and to be frank, not to say it's any better, it's just different. When we talk about organizing, we're really talking about how are we developing people to be able to do for themselves what they can.
Yeah. So you're creating leaders really to take charge in the community.
That's right. Yeah. So you don't have to belong to an organization, but you could be part of the conversation, and eventually, if you really wanted to, create an organization. We've had tenants and residents associations formed through taking this the training that we do. So we talk about leadership, we talk about power, we talk about power analysis. How do you actually analyze the power dynamic in your situation to be able to make change? We talk a lot about negotiation. How do you negotiate for change? Because after the protests and the marches, you're going to need to be at the table to negotiate. As we speak right now, there's a session going on with Citizens UK around police accountability, and so that's part of the training.
Well, that's amazing, because I had a guest on some weeks ago by the name of Dr. Rochelle Carr, and she kept talking about come to the table. A constant conversation was, we need to come to the table. We need to get leaders from all walks of life, people from all walks of life, to come to the table. And you're virtually saying almost the same thing about coming to the table.
Because if you're not at the table, you're on the menu.
Oh. If you're not at the table, you're on the menu. Oh my God. So if you're on the menu, you get ignored because it's a choice.
If you're on the menu, people are talking about you. Woo! And they're making decisions about you without you.
If you're on the menu, people are making decisions about you, but they're not talking to you and without you. Wow. Yeah. Wow.
So you've got to, and being at the table, Alex, is just the first step of like power. When you get to the table, the second question about power is, can we get a deal? Are we prepared to negotiate? Can we get a deal? Are we powerful enough to get a deal? Because
Wow.
actually the justice you get depends on the power you have to get that justice.
So what you're talking about then is that there's power in numbers. That's why you talk about organization so much.
Yeah, there's power in numbers, and we need to and when we talk about numbers, we're, of course, 6,000 is better than 600, but actually we never underestimate what a small group of people can do. Start there and build up, and start with what you can win. Sometimes we try to eat the elephant all at the same time, right?
Wow.
Break the problem into issues. Win the issue by issue. Attack it issue by issue.
So find the issues that's happening around you and start attacking them.
Yeah. Define the problem first. What's the problem we're trying to address here? And then what you do is you say, okay, so what are the issues? And in order to get to the issues, you've got to listen to people. You've got to listen to more people than just yourself, right? And so you've got to find out where are people feeling the pinch? What's putting pressure on people's lives right now, in our families, in our communities? And then you can start to think about the issues. And then you think, okay, we've got 10 issues, we've got 50 issues. What can we actually win?
Wow.
Right? What's winnable?
So this makes sense then, because when you refer to the churches, this makes a lot of sense, because in the midst of a church, there can be all these issues all amalgamated, because there's representation from people from all walks of life within a community.
Yeah. So are we having these conversations in church? Are we having this conversation? Are we? That's the question. And so that's really the and it's something we train people how to do that, and how to do that in a way that's real, that's meaningful, that develops people, that develops leadership within your church or your constituency, and that's the beginning of the kind of leadership journey, really.
So okay, so where does this training take place then? You referred a lot to this training. Where does this training take place?
Currently online, because we've had to move quite a lot of our stuff online. Usually we do a 3-day residential, a 6-day residential, or a 2-day sort of non-residential training. But a lot of our stuff is now online, and you can visit citizensuk.org, www.citizensuk.org. That's our website. And you can find some of the training we've already done. Actually, some of the webinars that we've done during lockdown are available online. You can view them. If you want to be part of a training session, and you're not part of an organization, I'm actually talking to a group of people who've approached me almost recently, actually, to say, hey, we're not part of an organization, but we would love to be able to do some of the training that you offer. And so we're kind of in conversation about that right now, to see if we can run some bespoke training sessions. So, Alex, feel free to share my email address to people who want to find out a little bit more about how we can, and the good thing about being online is you can join this training. If we get the time zones right, you can join this training online as well. And in terms of fees, once you email me, we can let you know. And of course, we charge per session. So the number of people, the more, and we are talking about 10 people per session, really not more than that, just because it's online and we want it to be meaningful. And so the fees will basically be per session and what you can pay towards that session.
So because it's online, how do people, if people want to be part of this and they can't afford it, if people want to be part of this and they can't afford it, what happens? What happens?
We would never really want money to be the reason we couldn't work together. So we will be able to figure out a way to kind of just put some of the training tools and the methodology towards you, and then basically see if you want to be able to make change. We would also encourage, because some of the groups that we work with, or some of the individuals that we work with, are usually paying out of their own pocket for stuff like this.
Hey, I was just about to say that to you. I during the period of lockdown, I'm talking to a lot of people, and I interviewed a particular young lady, and she was telling me of projects that she was running, and that some of her own people were running, and they were driving some of these projects, financing them from their own monies.
Yeah.
From their own monies. I said, well, man, you can't, you get support from somewhere, and they weren't sure where to go.
Yeah, so I mean, there are a lot of funders who fund individuals to do some of this stuff. So, we would encourage you to look for funding towards some of this if you're so inclined. But as I say, if there are people who want to explore this work and are serious about building power and are committed to the journey of leadership, then we can do the training and be in relationship and work together on that journey.
So let's start by building relationship then. Let's start by building that connection and broadening our focus in the community to start helping, finding where the issues are, finding people who want to be part of this move to bring change. Emmanuel, this is amazing stuff, man. This is amazing. And to believe that this has been happening in the background for the last 20 years.
Yeah.
But
and go ahead, sorry.
But doesn't anyone know about it?
Most people who know about it, that's the reason why I feel like I've dedicated my time towards leaning more towards the kind of Pentecostal churches and Black majority churches, mainly because most of the people who are represented, and this hear me out, guys, most of the people who are represented in our organization across Citizens UK are other churches like the Catholics, Anglicans, and they're doing phenomenal work, right? Phenomenal work.
Wow.
But Black Pentecostal, Black-led, Black majority are underrepresented in Citizens UK. And part of that, Alex, I find, is really this notion of sharing power with your people. We are unfortunately not inclined to do that within the Black church.
What you're saying is we're very protective. We're very protective, thinking you're going to steal my people.
Yeah, no, we want to develop your people so that you don't have to do all the work.
You don't have to do all the work, and that's the key, really. Developing people takes time and money. It takes effort, and so the more we share that process, the more we have people intermingling in different aspects of training, different aspects of the development, the better it is for everyone. Yeah.
So that's a challenge, and I think it's a challenge that we need to face head on in this season. And the main thing about this is, beyond the mobilization, we definitely got to organize. Otherwise, this will be a moment that will be lost.
Yeah, well, it's so important. It's so important to catch the momentum from what's happened. I mean, I was amazed when one of my friends sent me a text and told me that I think Lloyd's of London came forward and apologized for slavery.
I saw that.
I was just amazed. I think, wow, Lloyd's of London apologizing for slavery. So organizations are conscious of what's happened in the past, and they don't know how to make things right. And so we're saying, okay, how do we make things right? How do we help our community become better at what they do? How do we help our young men, our young boys become better educated? How do we do this? And we do this all by what we call organizing.
Organizing.
So if there was a sentence, let me not say a sentence, Emmanuel, because if I tell you to do a sentence, you might just you'll give me an actual sentence.
Yeah, you know.
You're so precise. So we're going to wrap this show up, and in wrapping up, I want you just to lay your heart out to the public about what they should be doing in this time and how they should be doing it, and as a consequence, if this happened, what it would do to our community.
Yeah, I think so. This is a critical moment for us, and I feel like the thing we need to do now is to really be strategic in our approach. So we need to strategize, mobilize, organize, strategize, and take action. That's basically what we need to do, and we can break that down into, let's think about what are our specific demands, right? Because we can only act on specific issues, not on big problems. That's really the thing that I think for us, getting to the table, knowing what we want is really, really critical. So we need to know what we want. We need to know more than what we don't want. We need to know what we want, and we need to make those demands clear, loud, and we need to keep at it. The reason why this organizing thing is now, I suppose, part and parcel of what I do as an individual, and part of my mission and my purpose, is because change, of course, through mobilizing, change can happen overnight. But actually, what we're talking about, systemic change, we need to organize. We need to be around the table. So, and there's lots of different types of tables. If you're going to be around, if you want to run for political office, that's fantastic. Be prepared to do that. If you want to work within civil society, within your church, your local group association, that's fantastic. Be there, show up and turn up. If you're a business and you want to work with other businesses to join your money power together, because we talked about people power in terms of organizing, but there's also another form of power, which is money power. Join your money power to achieve your purpose. Join your money power to be part of the solution. I came on this show really thinking, oh, Alex is going to ask me about solutions. I don't have the solutions because I don't know all the questions, right? You know the question you're asking. You know what is in your hand to do. You know what's in your power to do. Do it. And by do it, I mean, if you need the training, please do feel free. Alex, you've got my details. There we are. You got my details. Email me and let's get talking. That's really the first thing that we need to do. Let's get talking. Beyond the talking, we need to be making a plan for action. Doing a power analysis of who's in power right now where you are, who's got the power to say yes or no to our demands. Be at the table with them. Knock the door, and knock again. Where usually these doors, sorry, you asked me for a sentence, 5 seconds. These doors usually have that sign which says do not enter. But guess what? Other people are pushing that door and entering. That same door that says do not enter, other people are walking through that door. Push the door.
Walking through that door. Push the door.
Yeah, push the door.
I think you're being polite at the moment. You said knock the door. You said push the door, and you didn't say kick the door down. But
well, that's the next step. If you have
said
to
knock the door, push the door.
Sometimes that's what it's going to take, is kick the door down and be at the table. I hear some people say, why don't we create our own table? That's fantastic. But at the same time, you're going to need to be at particular tables if you're going to make change.
Yeah. You got to be represented at all the tables. Yes.
Yeah.
All the tables of power that exist. I can understand that. I can understand that.
So because what we want, Alex, is our menu, not somebody else's menu.
Hey.
Create.
Hey, 1 minute. Let say that point again, man. Bring that one again. I don't think we understand that. Say that one again. Can you hear me there?
No, I lost you there for a second.
You lost me. What is it? Repeat that sentence again. You said what we want is our menu.
Not somebody else's menu. We've got to create our own menu.
We've got to create our own menu. This is amazing because, by putting our menu out there, it means that we create choices as well. Am I right?
Yes, yeah. Choices of what we want.
Choices of what we want, not
Yeah,
what other people are preparing for us and creating for us and handing us as a solution for our community.
yeah. Because the solutions in our community are in our community.
Yes. Wow.
They're
This is
already
amazing.
there.
It's amazing. I just had a word from excellent presentation, learnt a lot, and we'll revisit as a point of reference. Wow. We have one more here from Lorraine Griffith. How interesting. Yes, sleeping giant Zion must arise. There are many
Yeah.
gifts which Zion must arise. Sleeping giants. Sometimes we are so busy with our everyday lives, and we get caught up with what's happening around us in our own house, in our own home, and probably in our own little church communities. And we forget to look outside. We forget to see what's going on. We forget to listen to what's happening around us, the heartbeat of other people. And the reason why I'm saying that, Emmanuel, is I'm asking you here. So, what are some of the campaigns that are coming up that you guys see as important?
No recourse to public funds, which is a really evil legislation that basically means people who've lived in this country are paying tax because of their immigration status, have no recourse to any public assistance. So that's one thing we're talking about, specifically as it pertains to homeless people. So, during lockdown, we've been able to house homeless people in hotels, including those with no recourse to public funds. Under normal circumstances, that would not have been possible. The government, thankfully, has listened to the voice of people and has suspended no recourse to public funds in order to house homeless people. So that's really one of the things that's quite very important: homelessness and no recourse to public funds. I mentioned before the living wage campaign for care workers. That's a big thing that we're working on at the moment. Also around affordable housing, and this might not resonate across the country, but in terms of affordable housing, we're talking about housing that's linked to your income, not the market. We're also talking about more decent living standards, especially in temporary accommodation. Local authorities in this country spend a lot of money on housing people in temporary accommodation, and quite a lot of it is not fit for purpose. So we're talking about minimum standards that need to be met in people who are vulnerably housed. There's also mental health. I know that quite a lot of one of the narratives around COVID was that it doesn't impact young people as much as older people that much, but actually there's been a big spike in mental health among young people during lockdown, and so that's one of the other campaigns that we're working on. I think that's probably quite a lot of the kind of national campaigns really that we're working on, Alex.
Wow, that is a lot. That is tremendous. That is tremendous. I just thought, well, before we go, if I could just jump onto your, I think I saw was looking at your website and thinking, wow, there's a lot going on, and just show people what's out there, what is Citizens doing in the community. So I just thought I'd just jump on here and share your website, because I thought there was a lot there going on. So go to citizensuk.org and just see what other people are doing around the country. Go and see what the boroughs are doing. Go and see what other churches involved are doing. Go and see, because only when you see things happening around you that you think, wow, I can be part of this too. Go and join up. Go and hook up with someone. Go and connect with someone to make change happen. You're not on your own. You don't have to do this on your own. But we have to do something in our lifetime. We can't just sit back and wait for people to do things for us. Am I right, Emmanuel?
You're definitely right, Alex. And thanks for sharing that. Actually, you can sign up actually for regular updates and to support that work, so that you're in the loop and you can, we receive alerts about the different webinars that we're going to be running. You can also access some of those webinars which we've recorded and put on the website. But do please register and support the work. or register and support yourself in terms of leadership development and so on further down the road.
And again, you can support Emmanuel. His email address is up there, emmanuel.gotora@citizensuk.org. The website's there, citizensuk.org, and can make connections, sign up and get information. Get information, get trained, and get active in your community. Emmanuel, thank you so much for tuning into the show today. Thank you so much for bringing such positive information. And it's amazing when, I imagine when you started over 20 years ago and it was just passion that was driving you. And there were probably some moments in your life when you thought, is this really, really what I should be doing? Or, you probably got discouraged. But you've now seen the fruit of your labor across the country. Isn't that amazing?
It is amazing, Alex. And, for me, the joy of being able to relate to other people and work together for real change is really what keeps me going. Yeah.
Real change. So what do we do next, guys? We need real change in our community. Because we need real change, we need to be trained. We need people to be trained. We need people to connect, people to make effort to make things happen in our community. Don't go away, Emmanuel, because we're about to wrap up the show. But before we wrap up the show, let's just get a word from someone. You are listening to the Message Talk Show and Podcast. Do you believe you have something to share? Do you believe you have something to contribute? Do you have a story to tell the world, to share with your community? Gandhi said, man often becomes what he believes himself to be. If you think you can, you can. If you think you can't, you can't. So join us on the Message Talk Show and Podcast with host Alex Gordon. So today you've been listening to Emmanuel Gotora on the Message Talk Show podcast. And we were talking about how to organize ourselves. After everything that's done, after every demonstration, after every protest, how can we organize ourselves to create more solutions? And citizensuk.org is one of those organizations that are organizing themselves and training people to be organized across the country, across every genre. Now, there may be other organizations out there that are doing this as well, but citizensuk.org is around, are willing to train you, are willing to develop you, are willing to help you. Thank you for tuning to the show. This is Alex Gordon from the Message Talk Show. Tuning to us on a Thursday, 11 o'clock, when we are ready to talk solutions again, when we are ready to talk to passionate, mission-centered individuals. Let me play you one more tune before I go. I like this one.
Yeah.